But we want to welcome everyone for being here. We're super excited that you're able to come and join us. Just a couple housekeeping items. We do have Spanish interpretation available. If you're interested, there should be on the bottom of your screen a little globe that says interpretation. Please go ahead and select the language that you would like to listen to. So in this example, it would be Spanish if you want to have interpretation services. So I'm actually going to let Patricia translate that for us in Spanish.
Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a todos. Estamos muy contentos que ustedes están aquí con nosotros. Vamos a empezar en un par de minutos. Estamos súper contentos de que van a participar en esta reunión. Quiero informarles que tenemos interpretación al español. Si ustedes deciden o les gustaría escuchar esta presentación en español, por favor, escojan en el globito que está en la parte de abajo su idioma de preferencia. En este caso, escogerían el español y vamos a empezar en unos minutos. Gracias.
Thank you so much for that. Also, I want to let everyone know if you need ASL interpretation, we do have that available. If you go to the interpreter, we have ASL 1 and ASL 2. There should be 3 dots on the right-hand corner. You select that and click pin. That will allow you to have them and see them throughout this conversation. So let's get started. My name is Carla Rivera. I am a community engagement coordinator for our community engagement department here in AISD. So I'm super excited and really looking forward to our conversation this evening. So thank you so much for being with all of us. We are trying to create a space where we are able to create community within our vertical teams and just throughout our district. We will be having a panel style discussion throughout this presentation. So if you have any questions, we will be having Q&A throughout each section. So if you want to go ahead and put that on the chat, you're more than welcome to, as well as just having raising your hand for the raise hand feature on Zoom, and we'll definitely call on you with any questions. So let's get started. I want to be able to introduce our fabulous panelists that we have this evening. So I'm going to get started with our superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time to join us and to engage with us. My name is Stephanie Elizalde, and I get to serve as the superintendent to serve you as the Austin ISD superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, our Chief Academic Officer.
Hi, everyone. Elizabeth Casas, Chief Academic Officer. Welcome. It's good to see everyone.
Thank you. Our Chief of Schools.
Good evening, everybody. Anthony Mays, Chief of Schools. Glad to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you so much. Our Equity Officer.
Good evening, Stephanie Hawley, Equity Officer, and it's good to see you all and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Next up, we have our Chief Technology Officer.
Good evening, everyone. Sean Brinkman, Chief Technology Officer. Thank you for being with us.
Our Chief of Police.
Hello, everyone. Ashley Gonzalez, Chief of your Police Department. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Our Chief Human Capital Officer.
Hi, Leslie Stevens. Thank you all for being here this evening and enjoying the conversations.
Our Chief Officer of Intergovernmental Relations and Board Services.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacob Reach, and I'm so excited to be here with our Eastside International and Garza communities.
Thank you. Our Executive Director of Innovation and Development.
Hi, everybody. Michelle Wallace, Executive Director of the Office of Innovation and Development. Thanks for making time to be here tonight.
Our Chief Operations Officer.
Hello, everyone. Matias Segura, Acting Chief of Operations. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, our Communications and Community Engagement Officer.
Hi, I'm Jason Stanford. Just started 10 days ago. Couldn't be happier to be here tonight.
Thank you so much for all of our panelists. I'm sure it's on everyone's mind as we are ending the year. Graduation is around the corner. So Dr. Mays, can you talk about a little bit about what graduation and any other events that might be happening during the summer?
I can. I'm sorry about that. I had to unmute myself.
No.
Yes, and we are excited to close out our year for our seniors. We know that this year has been filled with challenges, but hopefully we get to close on a high note. Our seniors will get a chance to participate in graduation, and it will be face-to-face. Due to COVID-19, we will be hosting those events in our outdoor stadiums to try to make sure that we can maintain social distancing. So students will be able to bring at least 4 guests, again, to try to make sure that we celebrate and we send them off. And we'll also be maintaining temperature checks, as well as screeners and everything else that we typically do to make sure that that environment is safe. And those dates will be May 28th through June 3rd. We'll also be hosting our proms. And so in light of COVID-19, food will be packaged as another safety precaution. We'll also be hosting those in indoor, outdoor venues to try to maintain social distancing. But again, we wanted to make sure all of our seniors had a chance to participate in those rites of passage that seniors typically get to participate in. So we're closing out the year, hopefully with lots of excitement, and we appreciate you all being a part of that process.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mays. And I'm sure everyone's really excited to hear that we were going to be able to have these amazing events that are really unforgettable. As we move on, I know that it's also probably on everyone's mind since we're ending the school year. And so, especially with this pandemic, right? And as we hopefully reach this light at the end of the tunnel, we kind of want to understand how we're preparing for summer session and next year. So Dr. Elizalde, can you talk to us about that?
Yes, thank you, Carla, for asking that question. First, we are definitely planning now that vaccinations have been more readily available for our staff, and as we move into the next school year, we can expect a much more traditional face-to-face type of environment for the next school year. One of the other areas that we've dedicated ourselves to and are committed to this next school year is we will create whatever different types of designs are necessary for our teachers to only be needing to provide instruction in only one method of instructional delivery. Meaning this past year, the majority of our staff have been asked to do simultaneous teaching or concurrent teaching, where they're serving both students that are on Zoom and students in the room. And that is a very, very challenging task for them to be asked to do. Those were one of the options that the TEA put out in terms of how we could offer that. So with that, we will have some form of virtual. It will be limited to certain students with certain meeting certain criteria, but we know that there might need to be such a need. And so with that, unfortunately, those of you that have been in the state of Texas long enough know that it won't be surprising that the Texas Education Agency has not yet provided us enough guidance as to what that needs to look like in order to be eligible for funding next year. But what we do want to know, what we do want to communicate is that teachers will not be having to do both in the room and in Zoom, but only one. So parents who may be eligible for the virtual hybrid or virtual instructional model will need to choose that option for a minimum of a semester. And that's so that we can ensure that our teachers have enough time. If we need to adjust at a campus level, our leaders will be able to make those adjustments and not require individuals to have to do two things. We're not going to do that this next year. In addition to that, in the summer, we will be working with students who have the greatest needs. So when we think about our high school students, definitely our seniors and students that are in transition grades, I believe Dr. Mays is working with the school leadership team and campus leaders so that individuals that may be moving from one grade level to another that requires a different campus. So if your child is in 5th grade and they'll be moving to 6th grade, what does that transition look like? And more importantly, or as importantly rather, students that have been in 6th grade that have not been on their campus, as another example, we need to work with them during their transition because they haven't been on their middle school campuses throughout the year. So if you think about all those transition grades plus the year that would have been a transition, I know that there's a plan being created at the campus level so that we can meet the needs of those students. And so that's what we're working towards. More details, of course, to follow as we get more information from the Texas Education Agency.
Thank you so much for all that information, Dr. Elizalde. And so I want to open it up to our community members who are with us here today. If you have any questions, we would love to hear from you. But as you gather your thoughts, you can either put it in the chat or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll call on you so that you can share with us. Since I don't see any questions or any hand raised at the moment, we did have a question in the pre-registration that I'm sure a lot of people would like to know, which is how does the district plan to retain staff and keep experienced staff members within our vertical team?
So that was a question that we had answered a little while ago, and what we look at is within our district strategic plan, we have a goal specifically for climate and culture within the district, and we feel like that is a cornerstone of retaining employees. When an employee feels connected and happy in their role in the district, then they are more likely to stay rather than leave. And so we are working hard to look at everything from our surveys, what we do on campuses and in our leadership roles to promote a good, healthy climate and culture. And so this is one of those intersection points between human capital and school leadership so that we can do some more focusing on how to develop climate and culture on campuses and within our departments in the district so that we do have happy employees.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Stevens. So I haven't seen other questions in the chat. So again, if you do have a question, please raise your hand and let us know. But going back to kind of like positions and staffing, we know we are facing some budgetary challenges, especially associated with COVID-19. So Ms. Stevens, how will that affect staffing and campus funding for our next school year?
So the way school district staffing and positions work is that every year we have a projected enrollment for the following year. And so we get that number in the spring. So a year ago, the district was projected to have a little over 80,000 students. And so when we started the 2021 school year, we were staffed for over 80,000 students. We currently, on average this school year, have an enrollment of 75,000 students. So we have 5,000 less students right now enrolled than what we staffed on. So in looking forward to next school year, our demographer has projected that our student enrollment will be right around 77,000. And so that is still less than the 80,000 that we're currently staffed on. So what we did was we looked at the staffing guidelines, and if we would have taken the staffing guidelines that were written in the district as they were and applied them to the projected enrollment of 77,000, we would have reduced a little over 600 campus positions. And so instead of just applying what was written, we looked at them from a multitude of ways in terms of, what we could do to better serve, our Black and Brown communities, and what kind of things could we embed within our staffing formulas to look at it through a more equitable lens. And in doing that, we did things like the former secondary ratio was 29:1, and that was the ratio. We looked at it, and what we did was we said, take the projected enrollment and then look at how many students on that campus are identified as economically disadvantaged. And so we waited for that and then divided by 28 instead of 29. And so that's kind of how we looked at the formulas in terms of, how many positions are going to be on each campus. In addition to that, we did some things that were important across the board. As you know, in our pre-K4 program, we used to let our pre-K4 students out 45 minutes before our elementary students. So if I was a parent and I had a pre-K4 student and then I had a first grader, then I would have to pick up my pre-K4 student and turn around and then come back and pick up my first grader. So instead of doing that, what we've done is we've put a teacher assistant in every one of those classrooms. So now our pre-K4 classrooms have the same school hours as our pre-K students. And so we looked at just some of those kind of things that you know, were different across the system, and tried to make sure that we were looking at it through the lens of, you know, what would be most helpful for parents, what provides the support on the campuses. And so with doing that and doing some revision of our formulas, and we're not done, and we know they're not perfect, nor are they, you know, all exactly right. It allowed us to kind of reset, but in doing that, we have about 200 to 250 positions that will be lost off the campus sites, but no employee is losing their job. So we will take those employees and just put them where we have vacancies across the district. And the 28-to-1 ratio, and I see it in the chat, are for grades 6 through 12. At the elementary level, it's the, you know, we have the state ratios in grades K through 4, and that's the 22-to-1. And then at 5th grade, we do 25-to-1. So the 28-to-1 is our secondary schools.
Well, thank you so much. I do see Gloria Vera Bedoya, who has a question or her hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, yes, I actually have a few questions. First of all, thank you for having this conversation. And I would like to say that I am, hold on, babe, sorry. We're driving home, so I've parked, so it'll be safer. Anyway, I would like to know what are our goals for, you know, retaining families or regaining those people that we've lost. I realized that a lot of this work happened prior to Dr. Elizalde's arrival. So I think that I've spoken one-on-one to Dr. Elizalde one time, and I apologize profusely for the mess that she inherited, because she did inherit one heck of a mess. So I feel like we can go up and up from here because of what was done in the past. But my question is, what are the goals for, you know, bringing back the students that we've lost? What are we going to do to regain those families? What are we doing to remove that stain of anti-Blackness that's been in the district for so long? I'm really disappointed that out of the 11 people that directly respond to Dr. Elizalde, the one Black woman is not chief of equity. That says so much to me, and it breaks my heart because we have such a great opportunity to do good things. And whether that position was created prior to the arrival of Dr. Elizalde, Dr. Elizalde still has all the power needed to change that. And if we can create a chief position for Mr. Segura and for Jacob Reach and for so many other folks, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. And my other question was, what are we doing to engage our bilingual families? And I realize it's Spanish. It's usually my go-to. When I think about bilingual, I think about English and Spanish. And I know that those aren't the only languages, but when I worked at Brook Elementary and the plan was enacted to shut the school down, you know, with the school changes, hot mess, we lost so many families to KIPP, to all the different charter schools. Some of the families reached out to me, and it broke my heart because they said they were going back to Mexico. They said, there's nothing for us here. We were under we had a most racist president. We had so much unrest politically. We had so much fear all the way around. And And then their students lost their second home. And I try really hard to process and get through that so that I can stop being mad about it, but I can't because these are children that we're affecting. We're helping them formulate thoughts and opinions and all that. And, you know, other people have failed them in the past, but we have the ability to stop that. And so I know I have a lot of questions, and I'm sorry, I will shut up now.
Well, no, thank you, Ms. Vera Bedoya. We really appreciate those questions. Before I have some of our panelists answer them, I just want to let everyone know that we are switching interpreters to ASL 1. But Dr. Elizalde or Dr. Mays, if you'd like to go ahead and answer some of those questions, that would be awesome.
Let me start with a couple of those. And it's never too much. It doesn't matter even if it's hard for me to hear, if it's hard for us to hear it, we have to hear it. And it doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything, Ms. Vera Bedoya, but you know what I appreciate is we're going to have the conversation. And that's the way that we can work, because what I do know is we do agree on the outcomes. We agree on the outcomes. And so the best thing about that is then we can't fail. We will succeed for our kids because you are speaking and you are talking to us about things that we have to hear. And so I will always, no matter how challenging they are, I appreciate you 100% and everyone else in our community. I can't just say I'm here to serve, I have to actually serve. And that begins with listening, and hard listening is going to be the first thing that we're going to continue to build on. So if anything, we thank you for continuing to ask us these very, very necessary, no matter how uncomfortable, questions. And so with that, I do want to just touch on a couple of things. One is we started our Operation Reconnect as one of the ways in which we're reaching out to families. Dr. Mays and that team started out last weekend. We did the Navarro, was that the Navarro or Northeast feeder pattern? I'm forgetting which vertical team that was. Northeast. And so with that, to your point, you know, we know gentrification has affected a lot of our enrollment, but it's not fair to say that's the reason why we don't have that many kids, because we still have, you said it very articulately, there are over 16,000 students who reside in Austin ISD who are not attending Austin ISD schools. They're attending charters. I'm not talking privates. I'm just talking charters, 16,000 students. So we do have to ask ourselves the question you just asked us. What is it that we either are or are not offering, or are or aren't doing, that our families are choosing something else? We can keep making other reasons, well, because of gentrification, well, because of this. Or we can take responsibility and say, we need to change the conditions at our schools in some areas where we know we've lost families. And that's going to take a very internal need for us to look internally, not externally. We have to look internally and say, why have they left us? And what do we need to do? And we began that process with Operation Reconnect, because they went and I think it was over 600 families that we connected in this visit on this one Saturday, half a day. And guess what? We heard a lot. They gave us a lot of information about why they aren't in our schools. Now, the rest is up to us. They give us the information. Now, if we don't do anything with the information, that is absolutely on us. But we now have information that probably wasn't a complete surprise, but I do tell you, it was interesting that when all of us were out there and we heard it, it does make a difference when there's a community of folks, which I have to thank all of our staff and volunteers who came out to support that, and we're gonna do more. So I wanna say that's one of the outreaches that we're going to do, and then we've got to respond to the data. The second thing we're gonna have to do is with regard, and while there are other languages, we do know that Spanish is one of the primary languages of the other languages, right? And so we need to examine how can we continue to expand as well as align our dual language bilingual programs, because what we did observe, what we have to accept is all bilingual programs are not created equal right now in Austin ISD. And so I know that some people get like, oh, what? No, we can't fix what we don't acknowledge. And so and I own it. And I appreciate you giving me some benefit of the doubt. And because I did occasion, and I'm going to reflect on that. It doesn't matter when I got here. I think Ms. Tovar, in one of our earlier meetings this week, also mentioned that, and you're right. You know what? It doesn't matter when I got here. It's all on me. It's all on us. We're going to work together now to make improvements. So we currently have 78 elementary campuses and 18 middle schools and 11 high schools. And we really need to talk about where are those dual language programs at each of those schools, and do we have that aligned? So we heard from some parents, for instance, that say, we're here in the elementary, we leave because the two-way dual language model isn't at my middle school. And there's no way for me to get to a middle school where the dual language program is. Well, guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna provide transportation. We're gonna expand transportation in some areas. We heard from families, the charter school picks up my child right in front of this apartment complex, but AISD won't do it because it's within 2 miles. Well, guess what we decided? You know what? That's an investment. That's not an expenditure. It's an investment. So guess what? We're going to change the 2-mile radius in many of our locations. Dr. Mays worked with Mr. Segura, and they're making those changes now to affect this next school year. So now parents are like, really? It'll stop right here in front of the apartment complex like the charter school? Yes, just like that. And they're like, well, then in that case, we'll come to an Austin ISD school. We have to recognize and walk the steps that our children have to walk to get to a school. It may not be the distance. It may be the things that they're passing. It may be the streets that they're crossing. It's not just the 2-mile radius. That's what's going to continue to make Austin ISD unique, is when we respond to those individual situations rather than making it completely just the same because that's the way it is. Early college high schools. Great programs if we would actually put the resources for those programs to be even bigger than they are. And one of those resources includes transportation. What if I'm really interested in one of the programs that's at Eastside Memorial and I can't get there? Well, how about we provide transportation for those programs? And so we have some opportunities, again, responding to our community, listening to what they're saying to us, to what you're saying to us, in order for us to do that. And then the last piece, I do know, we are still looking at Mr. Segura. I was trying to find you on the screen here. Mr. Segura is working with that ability to utilize some of our current property, and instead of selling it, which we are not going to do, how can we maybe utilize some of that to provide another investment in our community? And that is an area we're looking at, of affordable housing. I know I see Mr. Tovar on this call as well, who's done lots of work around that. Thank you, sir, for being here. And we want to continue to partner with you all. The solutions are within our community. They're within our community. We just have to have those challenging conversations, and we'll get over it.
I would say I don't have much more to add to what Dr. Elizalde just shared, outside of we have our school leadership team on this call. And so Laura Stout, who supervises our secondary schools, that's middle and high school, for all of us, our expectation is that our buildings absolutely go above and beyond to make sure that our families feel welcomed, and that our students feel welcome, and that we do what we need to do to meet the needs that are presented for our families and our students. And so every day we're trying to make sure that we provide a listening ear, and that we go about trying to make sure that we respond to those voices that are and those concerns that are shared with us, and we try to do that promptly. And so we're always here if the needs are not being met at the campus, to support you all. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you so much for all those answers and that information. I know there's some really tough questions, but I really do appreciate it. I know that we have Gabriel Estrada, who's had his hand raised for a while. So Gabriel, if you can unmute yourself.
But, I have a part of my question wasn't answered. What are we doing to address anti-Blackness in the district? Because I know that that's a really uncomfortable question for me to even ask, honestly. I can tell you that I am working hard to raise children that respect and admire people of all colors, not just Latinos, because, you know, I'm very proud of being a Latina. I am. And my children are too, you know. I'm raising a little Dolores Huerta back here. But what examples are we setting? Hold on, baby.
Do I look like Dolores?
She wants to know if she looks like Dolores. I want to know what examples we're setting for our children when we practice exclusivity that way.
Thank you. So any of our panelists can answer that question, please?
Well, I know we're doing a number of things, both from just an overarching, how do we begin with us, ensuring that all of us understand what that even means. And so as a matter of fact, I think it was last week, Dr. Holly, you're gonna have to help me because I can't even remember, when we had the conversation about laying out the professional development plan that you were recommending and how that would be different by requiring us to then have discussions and conversations. Because the way we change that is we have to start, that is one of the things that has to start at the top, right? It's something that we have to ensure that we are doing ourselves. And as I turn it over to Dr. Holly, I just want to give one real example in addition to all of the ones that I know you all can share. You know, we had someone visit one of our, the spouse of one of our executives in our building, and the spouse happens to be African-American, and she entered the building and she went to visit her spouse, and the phones were ringing because there was a Black woman in the building going up to visit someone. So I'm sharing that transparently with you all, that's something that even, so to your point, Ms. Vera Bedoya, I don't want to downplay it because it's something that is happening. If that's happening in a building where we are all working, then I have to ask, then what's happening on our campuses? But Dr. Holly, can you help with some of the training we had talked about as well?
Yes, Dr. Elizalde and I had a good conversation about how important it is for us to speak the same language. And Gloria, I think you've probably had a lot of intense training in the community. And we talked about we have to have a shared language, because when you say anti-Blackness, many people on this call probably their faces get warm and they don't know what that means, or they do know what that means. And so we talked about our executive leadership and our board. That's going to be our first step, the executive leadership team and the board getting some training with Beyond Diversity, and eventually moving on to Undoing Racism, which we know that that is very strong training. But we want to make sure we prepare people through Beyond Diversity and then some of the offerings we have here in the district as well. So we are having those hard conversations about how we all come to understand what you named it, because that's the beginning of changing it, right? And so the training and the professional learning is going to help us get on the same page so that we have different experiences in central office and out on our campuses. So we're moving forward with that.
I would add to it too, Dr. Holly, because we get a chance to work together, you know, on training our executive directors, and Dr. Holly and her team is providing that training. I think one of the pieces that we often hear from community members as well as employees within our system is about accountability. You know, where's the accountability when we do have these situations of anti-Blackness or, you know, microaggressions? How do we address that behavior amongst ourselves as professionals when we have these incidents? And so I think that's another component that, you know, Dr. Elizalde brings, Dr. Holly brings, us having those tough conversations about, you know, whether it's holding each other accountable for behavior or holding others accountable for behavior that they exhibit. We have to do that, and that's vital to us changing the dynamics of what we see happening across our district. And so I think that our team is heavily vested in doing that and making sure that we take those steps.
Thank you so much for that transparency. Let's ask Mr. Estrada, who's been waiting patiently to ask this question, to open it up and start this new discussion.
Well, first of all, Gloria, thank you for bringing that conversation to the forefront. As always, you have voice from community. Thank you all for having this. Dr. Elizalde, it's a great pleasure to meet you face to face on a Zoom, although I've seen you often. and everyone else on here. Thank you again for serving our public school system. That's the most important thing that we always got to remember, is the fact that there's only one big team in Austin, Texas, that's playing this game that's called public education, and we've got to make sure that we keep this together. As a lifelong supporter of public ed, as a lifelong educator, I support the idea that we need to make sure that we're listening to our communities. And as a lifelong member of the understanding of what Eastside community is, I strongly encourage you to really, every one of y'all, to look at the history of Eastside and the things that have happened and have not happened. Just because of time, I want to shorten this idea that Eastside Memorial and Martin Middle School have done a lot of great things in spite of the fact that there have been a lot of barriers put before them. Their Innovation Academy that they have created over the past couple of years that have actually brought kids back into that school is something that the district should be looking at and saying, wow, how did that happen? How do we make sure that that stays and continues? Those are the important things. The important things is to make sure to also look at the idea of what's happening within. When everyone looks on the outside in, are we making sure that we're holding everyone accountable to do the great work that's happening? We do not want great test takers. That comes with great education. Dr. Elizalde, I've heard you say this over and over, and I'm really excited about this idea that when you provide a great opportunity to learn, great things are going to happen. Things will occur. And the idea of critical thinking within our schools has to be at the forefront, the ability to see things and think things through. I want people to start thinking about Texas history from the vantage point of how do we look at the people who were here before? How do we see things? And that's important. So just continue to do what you're doing. You know you have support. There's a lot of us here that support AISD in spite of the fact that, yeah, they've gone off the tracks many times. But we're here to support you. And I have so many questions. Just make sure that, you know, Eastside, is it part of District 2? Are you changing boundaries because of this new school that's now in Eastside? Is there a new vertical team? Is Oak Springs going to be part of Eastside now? Thoughts like that come into my mind. So thanks again for this opportunity, and I look forward to hearing more thoughts.
Thank you for that. I just want to take just a minute to at least address the last part, because we are moving towards gathering information on the real critical issue about the boundaries for Eastside that will be ultimately, I believe, Eastside Early College High School. And so with that, we are not going to make any changes to the boundaries this first year. One of the things that we want to do is we want to see what kinds of transfers do we get on its own for many of the reasons you described about some of the programs. As a matter of fact, at the next board meeting, when we talk about college career military readiness, Eastside has had 3 years of gains over those particular metrics, right? And probably without a whole lot of support that we need to be providing, such as transportation for students who may want a program at a school and who aren't, you know, who may be in a near area, but not actually in that attendance boundary. The one adjustment that I'm going to make for year one, not in changing the attendance boundary, but in extending those students who are actually not in the Eastside boundary currently, but that are adjacent to the new location. So that those students, if they live right across the street, but they're not officially in that attendance zone, if they want to go to Eastside, they will have automatic transfer rights. They won't have to go through a bunch of hoops to jump through. Now, the reality, because when we see that building, and I've been there, what a gorgeous facility. When we start, and under Miguel Garcia's leadership, when we open that up to open houses and have people start coming in to visit, you know, Mr. Segura's team has done a remarkable job with that facility. And so with the changes that they've already made and the successes they've already had, and with our new communications chief getting that information out about those successes, so many times we get on these community meetings and we're hearing, where are you all communicating to your community about these successes? And what a great question to ask us, because we've got to do a better job in getting that information out. And so we're going to build on that. build on the successes of the innovation programs that they have, provide transportation, and only have what we'll basically call a double attendance zone. That section that will actually is open right now to McCallum. But if students want to go to Eastside, and again, it's just this one little section that's right on the forefront of the new building. But looking at that facility, I can't imagine not wanting to send my child there and knowing the programs. I was at Eastside Memorial yesterday. Finalist Teacher of the Year from Eastside Memorial, Dr. Jeans. Like those are the stories we got to tell, because that's the talent that we have there. And so thank you for raising that. And I'll be happy to put some contact information for myself, for everyone, but certainly Mr. Estrada, for you to also be able to reach out so that we can even have further conversation at your convenience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizalde. We have some really good questions, so we'll be asking those shortly, but we kind of want to talk to our community about the equity lens and talking a little bit about our equity advisory committee. Dr. Holly, can you talk about that?
Absolutely. The whole idea behind the Equity Advisory Committee has to do with engaging and starting some healing work. If you'll see at the top of the diagram to the far right, we really want to work on community building and education. A lot of our advisory committees don't focus on that so much. It's usually about recommendations and getting decisions made, but we know that we have to start to get, as I said earlier with the training piece, is to start to get a common language so we know what we mean when we say things. And also so we understand the history of our district so we don't repeat past mistakes. And so there's a lot of power in that community building and education subcommittee, but all the petals, as Dr. Elizalde calls it, the bloom, the blossom, all those petals represent subcommittees of this Equity Advisory Committee. And this committee will be providing recommendations to Dr. Elizalde regarding those topics listed on the petals. And some of you will see the equity assessment, which is a hot topic these days. But we have a subcommittee that will be getting together in the next couple of weeks to look at what areas will we identify and focus on for that assessment, so that we can move forward and put out an RFP and get that work rolling. And if you note just there to the left, this is the composition of the advisory committee. And we thought it was important to have 2 community chairs and 2 internal folks to lead this work. And so it's time consuming when we're equitable and when we're inclusive. And so this work is going a little bit slower, but it will allow us to go faster later, and we recognize that. But we welcome all of you to join one of these subcommittees because we need your wisdom. And as Dr. Elizalde says, there's wisdom in this community, and this is a way we can tap into it in an organized fashion. And Dr. Elizalde, did you want to add anything? Did I leave anything out of that?
You didn't leave anything out. I just always like to call it that flower petal blooming. After you put it together and I started calling it that, I just really think that this graphic demonstrates all of the conversations, Dr. Holly, you and I had about how we can connect with the priority focus areas and create subcommittees from that committee to focus on those different areas. This started off just as a committee for the equity assessment, and you and I visited and I approved that we would then develop these subcommittees for us to be able to address those priority focus areas, and how this will also even inform and overlap our work on our strategic or our district improvement plan. So just thank you, Dr. Holly, for all of the work that you're doing to keep us with equity at the center of our decision making.
Thank you so much, Dr. Holly and Dr. Elizalde. And so as we transition, let's talk a little bit about our communication priorities. So Jason, do you want to talk a little bit briefly about that?
Sure, thanks, Carla. Again, my name is Jason Stanford, and 10 days ago, I became the new Chief of Communications and Community Engagement for Austin ISD. I could not be more excited about taking on this role. And it's not just because I get to work for Austin ISD. I'm also an Austin ISD dad. I get the same emails, text messages, newsletters, and robocalls that you do. And I have been getting them for the last 15 years. So I get it. Sometimes the way we communicate with you can be confusing, if not outright irritating. So my background is not in public ed. My background is in communications. I'm here to help fix that problem and to communicate with you better. The number one thing in communications is audience. You're the audience. I want to serve you. And if we're not communicating well with you, then we are not actually communicating. So I need to know, I want our communications to be what you need to know, when you need to know it, and delivered how you want to get it. That's where I want to start this job, with you. So now is the time for me to get your feedback. So as I build this out, tell me what you want, tell me what you don't want. I drop my email address and mobile number in the chat there. Please contact me whenever you want. My goal is for this school district to communicate with you in a transparent, frictionless, and friendly way. But communication is a two-player game. I can't do this without you. And I'm looking forward to getting your advice on and your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. We appreciate your honesty. So as we move on, I know that the board had just recently adopted a strategic plan framework shortly before the new change in leadership last summer. And so we kind of wanted to know, what are these developed target strategies? So Ms. Wallace, can you talk about that with us?
Yes, of course.
Michelle, before you get started, can we take a moment, please acknowledge we have one of our trustees who's taken time. I've seen Trustee Singh all over the place this week, but I just want to take a moment to let our community know that Trustee Singh has taken time again to sit in on one of these. Trustee Singh, I don't know if you want to wave a little bit so everybody can see you for a moment.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to see you all here. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Trustee Singh. I'll give you a quick update on the strategic plan. You may know that last year the Board of Trustees developed and approved the strategic framework, and that includes our mission, vision, values, and priority focus areas, with equity as a foundation for all of this. Trustees were very deliberate in saying, we don't want equity as another kind of focus area. We want it embedded throughout all of the priority focus areas in the strategic plan. Those focus areas are student well-being and achievement, teacher and employee well-being, culture of respect and customer service, and fiscal stewardship and prioritization. Right now, the administration with Dr. Elizalde's leadership is developing strategies and then actions that will make progress in those priority focus areas. And we're really fortunate in having the great work and community engagement that's happened under the leadership of Dr. Holly and her office and our equity office over the last year. And we're really working hard to incorporate the community engagement and the themes that have come out of the equity action plan and recommendations into those strategies and action steps for the strategic plan. So that's just a high level update, and thanks for letting me share that.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. And so now that we've adopted this framework, Dr. Elizalde, can you explain next steps for us?
Sure. Very briefly, I would love our community to know that what did we do then with this strategic framework? Well, this strategic framework then informed our district scorecard. And I want to emphasize, this is our district scorecard. It represents all of our work. Certainly, it is a cornerstone of my evaluation by my bosses, the Board of Trustees, but it is a representation of all of our work because I teach 0 students. So clearly, I am super dependent on our team, on our campuses to make sure that we're successful with our students. And then the scorecard, great, we have outcomes. How are we going to get there? And so the district improvement plan was really meant to allow us an opportunity. Excuse me, one moment. Sorry, I had some other noises going on behind me here. My apologies. So the district improvement plan then actually are the strategies in which we're going to meet the student outcomes on the scorecard. And then we learn from those strategies. And if we meet those goals, great. When we don't, we need to reevaluate, and we need to take, we need to progress monitor this. This doesn't need to be at the end, we say we met it or we didn't meet it. We need to provide ongoing progress monitoring to our Board of Trustees and to our community, so that we will know how close we're getting. And this is going to be cyclical, and it embeds the equity action plan that Dr. Hawley's team has worked on, and it allows us to make sure that equity isn't separate, that we don't have two plans, that instead we have one plan. And this will be available to everyone for everyone to see.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizalde, for that information. So I want to open it up to any last questions. If you want to go ahead and put it in the chat, I do have 2 questions pending. So I want to open it up to Mr. Tovar to ask his question first.
Thanks, and thanks AISD leadership for doing this. And oh, Martin's principal is here. I just saw Miss Grattan, that's awesome. I think it's her like 10th day, 11th day so, as the new Martin principal. Sorry, I got distracted.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you, and good to see you all.
Project Reconnect. Oh, sorry. I was a part of Project Reconnect on Saturday. I got there a little late, but I loved it. And I think it was great to see with our eyes and to really prioritize the most impacted community, the parents and students. And I know I saw Dr. Mays driving around on Reagan Hill Drive. And I wanted to advocate that that is probably one of the most prime locations to have a bus, because there's a handful of apartment complex right there on Reagan Hill Drive. And we had parents talk to us about that. And we also had parents talk to us about, you know, why they sent their kids to charter schools. And a lot of it was about discipline. And I think that, you know, I watched the board meetings and I see the presentations about losing kids to charters and talking about programming differences. And a lot of it is about discipline. And a lot of it is about how charters have, you know, are deregulated to have different discipline policies and to, you know, not allow certain kids and to create and fabricate what they want for their schools. And that's not something I want AISD to replicate. I think it's unethical. I think it's immoral, and it's a perpetuating fraud. So I'm AISD proud to not have those same policies, but there are parents that actually like that. So that's a harder conversation that I think we have to, you know, to have. But more than anything, that action, and I'm going to get to my question right now, that action, the Reconnect gets data. And for years, the district has talked about being data driven. And so we have data around, you know, kids at charters and how many kids we lose at charters. We don't have data around how many families we lose to housing. So because that data doesn't exist, it's, I think, impossible to say for whatever community that we're losing more kids to charters than housing, or more kids to housing than charters, you know, with complete confidence, or that one outweighs the other, because we don't have that data. So, and that's why I've been advocating for low-income housing on AISD lots since 2013, because I've seen it at Go Valley. I've seen my kids' best friends, I'm a parent of Go Valley and Eastside, parents say, we're not going to be here next year. I've seen parents who were like, oh, I think I want to be PTA president, tell me they no longer live in the area. I recruited 3 parents to consider running for school board this past you know, election cycle. All of them are District 2 parents. None of them live in a District 2 because they can't afford to live in District 2. So these are the harsh and sad realities. And my question is, can we start as soon as possible to try to get exit or withdrawal data from families about like why they're leaving, even if it's just a minimal, you know, survey of, is it another school? Why? Is it because of dual language programming? Okay. Is it a charter school? Why? Oh, is it because of customer service? Whatever it is. Is it because of housing? Oh, okay. Where are you going? Okay. So just that's what I'd like to see, so we can really have more data to make more sound decisions as to what our communities need and what how our schools can benefit and the district can benefit. Thank you.
It's a short answer. Yes, we can and we will. We do have some data, but we haven't collected the data holistically where we can say, this is the percentage that we're getting that are saying this. So we need to do a better job of putting all of that together so that we can report that out, just as you illustrated, Mr. Tovar. So we are absolutely working on that. I know Dr. Mays is creating a follow-up exit survey for parents so that we can truly aggregate that data and then disaggregate the data so we can see how many are about this, how many are about that, and how many are about that. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Dr. Elizalde, and thank you, Mr. Tovar. I want to call on Nancy Mims next. If you want to go ahead and mute yourself.
Hi, yes, thank you. So I asked a question about magnets in the chat, but I also, since we just brought up the report card, I have a question about expectations based on the report card. And that is, why are our reading goals for third graders so low for Black and Latinx students? We know that third grade reading is an important marker for opportunities for our children's future. So I'm just curious to know why we consistently keep these expectations so low. And when are we willing to raise those, knowing that raising these expectations will offer greater opportunities for our students? Thank you.
So obviously a super powerful question. The data that we're already working against what the predictability model already shows. So whether it's easy to see or not, the truth is that the data that we put are already above what we would predict if we didn't make any changes. Now, the goal absolutely would be to be above those, but we know we have to start with an area in which all of our data have to come from what our students are receiving. Getting to a point where there aren't opportunity gaps between our student groups has to begin with ensuring that our programs have the resources and the support that they need early on. And so part of that will be that the goal will be to ultimately continue to make changes so that we're increasing those. But we also recognize that in order for the district aggregate data to be there, it actually starts at the campus, right? And so we have to ensure that we're providing the campuses the data, the support necessary so they can reach the goals. Because the district data is nothing more than an aggregation of how all of the schools are doing. And so we are evaluating where are the schools that we do have. That's part of how our staffing model was created, was economically disadvantaged as the proxy for adding additional staff, so that we could lower some class counts. And that's because 78% of our African-American students and 72% of our Latino students are included in the proxy for economically disadvantaged. So you can see a large overlap. And so that step towards equity, which is really painful sometimes, because when we start to do the work, as Dr. Hawley says, that's when everybody starts to be affected. And sometimes it's like, wait a minute, what did equity mean? And so part of that is to ensure we redo our systems to ensure we meet those. We'll be having further conversations, but when we worked with the board and we looked at our data, and I assure you our board members ask those same questions over and over again, but we can provide a further conversation about how we arrived at that number to begin with. And the goal would always be to exceed that and to redo our goals. It is going to be a process. It's not something that we can say in 1 year, we're going to go from here to here without actually having strategies. We can put a goal out there, but if we don't actually put the supports with it, then we're also just putting a number without having any real support for us to reach that number. And I would rather have set a number that we exceed and then continue to increase it than to simply say, oh, we're going to go out and have a lofty goal and not have any of the resources necessary to reach those goals.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizalde. And so we are approaching the end of this meeting, but before we do, I want to call on Emily Sawyer, who has been waiting. I want to let everyone know that all of our questions will be saved, so we will be able to follow up. Also, if you'd like to connect Gabriella Becker, who's also another community engagement coordinator, has provided her email in the chat so that you can also get your questions answered. Ms. Sawyer?
Sure, I'll just quickly say that I wanted to call out positively the talent acquisition department and the small group meetings that I've been able to be a part of with them. They've been really wonderful. And I also I guess I want to beat the drum of responsibility and how are we asking the grownups in the room to be responsible. I've had my nose in the student code of conduct quite a bit lately. And this goes to my question around hiring. And how are we changing we could change our interview questions next week to hire folks who are already practicing the cultural proficiency and the anti-racism that we're doing training on. And it's a whole life process, so it won't make that unnecessary, but it will make an improvement and make a difference right now. And then the responsibility piece is, how are we asking grownups to be responsible for both, their test scores and their cultural proficiency? If you're not meeting those expectations, then how are folks held responsible and how can we know that? And so I guess it doesn't need to be answered now, but thanks for the chance to say it out loud.
Thank you, Ms. Sawyer.
I know we're out of time, but I do want to just say that there is work ongoing with new evaluation instruments that Dr. Mays is working on to hold all of us accountable with regard to culture and climate, which I think goes, there's a big portion of that is about the cultural proficiency. And we haven't included that generally in the way in which we've evaluated leaders, and we do need to include that. And I do assure you that I see Ms. Grattan on here, and I asked her quite a few different questions that would be in line with cultural proficiency that were not the typical questions that have been asked. But you're right, we can also continue to expand on where those questions are being asked. So thank you for raising that and for ensuring that we continue to stay focused on that, Ms. Sawyer. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Well, we really appreciate everyone's time. Again, for those that we were unable to address your questions directly, we will be saving, again, those questions in the chat, and we will be able to respond to those. If you weren't able to put it in the chat, please make sure to email Gabriella Becker at austinisd.org so that she can share those questions with this team of leaders. We really appreciate all of you for the transparency and the honesty and really educating us on next steps and what we are going to look forward in this, the end of this year and what's going to be happening next year. So we really appreciate y'all. I would like to also say thank you to Trustee Singh for joining us, and to all of our interpreters, both Spanish and ASL. We really do appreciate taking the time to provide and bridge this message that we're trying to connect with our families. We wish you all a wonderful evening, and we look forward to just continuing these conversations. So everyone have a good evening and enjoy your day. Bye.